I was getting ready for a 5 o'clock Friday afternoon Mass, which we had at my last parish. Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock. It was a wonderful time for people to come together before the weekend. And a pretty good attendance every week. But I was in the sacristy. Everything was set up. And I was just kind of quietly reflecting, waiting, when suddenly I heard some screaming and yelling and crying, and then a crash and kind of an ongoing thud behind the church, in the alley between the church and the school. So I looked out the window, and there was this kid standing there right in the middle of the alley with his bicycle. And he was kicking the bicycle, and he was yelling at the bicycle, and he was really upset. I was about to go out when I also noticed a man from the parish who always came to that Mass come walking by. And he walked up to the kid, and I couldn't hear what he said, but he must have asked what was wrong. And the kid pointed at the bicycle and was ready to kick it again. And the man said something, and he picked up the bicycle. He turned it upside down so that it was resting on the pavement, on the handlebars and on the seat, with the wheels facing up. And then very carefully he took the chain and put it back through the cogs. You know how that happens with a bicycle? The chain had come off. I suspect this wasn't the first time. Maybe that's why the kid was so angry. But anyway, the man carefully put it back on. The boy watched. The man even ran the pedals a few times to make sure it was back in place. It was aligned. And then the man put up his hand like that, like, wait a moment. He left, probably went to his car, came back a little bit later with a wrench. And he started tightening up some different bolts so that it would not slide off again. When he's finished, they turned the bicycle back around. The kid's tears were gone by this time. He was definitely quieted. And I heard him yell to the man, "Thanks, mister," and he rode off. All of this happened right before Mass, and it was done before Mass started. The man was able even to come into church with the wrench. I thought to myself afterwards, life is hard. Things go wrong. Bicycles break down. So do cars. So do other things in our life. We have problems. Some people will lash out, and they'll get mad, and they'll kick, and they'll scream, and they'll blame. Others look for some help from someone else. Some people figure it out for themselves. If we were to talk about this, who received the blessings from this simple act of this man? Now, obviously, the bicycle is inanimate, but if it were animate, the bicycle would probably say, well, I was the one that was blessed. The kid wasn't kicking me anymore. And I got the chain back in place where it's supposed to be. It was realigned. I can work again. But setting aside the bicycle, that probably didn't say much at all. Obviously, the boy was blessed. He got his bike back, and maybe he learned a lesson in the process. But if we really want to look, the blessing also went to the man. Because anytime we reach out and share with someone else, it comes back to us. That is the message in the gospel. How we are blessed when we share kindness with others. Now, we don't do it just to like, well, gee, I'm going to feel good, so I'm going to do it. But the blessing does come back to us. Have you ever noticed some people are empathetic by nature? They simply have that ability, it must be in their DNA, to feel compassion for people almost automatically, and nothing holds them back. They see somebody in trouble, they are willing to go there and lend a hand, lend an ear, give their attention. That's pretty incredible, and we love people like that. We need people like that. For all of the rest of us, however, we have to work at it. It probably doesn't come naturally. We have to make ourselves aware that, oh yeah, somebody is hurting right now, or somebody is struggling. We have to then decide not to give in to fear, but go ahead and take a step towards that person. We have to offer what we can, even if we feel like we don't have a whole lot to offer. The gospel passage I read from Matthew has two parts. That whole first part about loving Jesus before you love your parents, more than you love your parents or your children. I'll get back to that. But in the second part, Jesus is saying, if you reach out to a prophet, you get the prophet's reward. If you reach out to a righteous person, you get the righteous person's reward. And the one that I love, if you give even a cup of cold water to a little one, you get the reward for that too. The person we assist is rewarded, but it comes back to us. By the way, that is pretty much the same thing you find later in Matthew's gospel, chapter 25, verse 31. The last judgment scene where Jesus separates the sheep from the goats. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger away from my homeland and you welcomed me. And it goes on. But the next line is, Lord, when did we see you hungry or see you thirsty or see you sick? And Jesus says, whenever you did it for one of the least ones, you did it for me. It's the same notion. We don't necessarily see Jesus, but when we do something, we are working in the realm of Jesus. We are learning to align ourselves, just like the bicycle chain had to be realigned with the cogs. We have to learn to align ourselves with those who are hurting. But in the process of doing it, we're getting into the mindset of who Jesus is, because that's what it's all about. Where there is kindness and love, we find the Lord. And then that takes us back to the first half of this gospel passage, where it says, love me, Jesus, more than mom and dad and kids and grandkids. He's not saying don't love other people, but he's saying when you learn to love Jesus more, then you actually get into the mindset of Jesus, and your love is greater, and then actually you are going to love your parents and grandkids more, because it's not only your love, it's the love of Jesus. Kindness and love are contagious. They get passed on. More than one person is blessed from every kind act we do. It just continues to filter down. In the last 3, 4, 5 months, we've all learned a whole lot about contagiousness or contagion. We've all learned about contact tracing. We've all learned about how one person's infection could cause other people's infections. But virus is not the only thing that's contagious. So is goodness. So is kindness. This is what we're talking about. And if we could, there's no way we could do contact tracing with an act of kindness. We don't know what that boy did after the bicycle was fixed. If he was able to pass on an act of kindness, like letting his little brother ride his bicycle. That's going pretty far. But you know, that's what it's all about. We want contact. We can't find the contact tracing, but we do want it to be a real thing, that the good we do affects others and others and others, but it also comes back and affects us and makes us better. It all starts, though, when we learn to be empathetic and realign ourselves with the needs of those around us.